Well, good morning. It's such a privilege and honor for me to be here with you this morning. I'm so grateful to Pastor Gord and Pastor Beth and Pastor Jill for the invitation to be here and to share the word with you. Our word this morning comes from Exodus 31, verses 12 through 17. Hear now the word of the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "You yourself are to speak to the Israelites. You shall keep my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, given in order that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you. You shall keep the Sabbath, because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work on it shall be cut off from among the people. 6 days shall work be done. But the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. Therefore the Israelites shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. It is a sign forever between me and the people of Israel, that in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day God rested and was refreshed." Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, it is clear after reading these verses from Exodus that God takes the Sabbath with grave seriousness. One of the starkest repetitions you hear in these few verses is the repetition, "will surely die." And its first cousin in the ancient world, this one will be cut off from among the people. Those who profane the Sabbath, now the Hebrew phrase translated here as profane, is literally who make light of. So it's talking about those who neither acknowledge nor embody the weight or the importance of Sabbath practice in their life. So those who profane, who make light of the Sabbath, will be cut off from the people, which in the ancient world was akin to certain death. The death of the soul, and likely also the death of the body. So why all the fuss? And more importantly for us today, are we all facing certain death and excommunication? Doubtless, few of the people hearing my voice today have vibrant Sabbath practices that shape your values and determine the rhythms and priorities of your life. So what is the Sabbath? And is it truly a matter of life and death? Well, you might not be surprised to hear that my answer to that question is a resounding yes. In the book of Exodus, the Sabbath played a central role in Israel's spiritual formation. Sabbath observance was first instituted here in the wilderness, between the border of Egypt to the west and the border of the promised land of Canaan to the north. God gave Sabbath to the people in order to transform them from who they had become as slaves in Egypt into who God was calling them to become, God's beloved children. For 400 years, Israel had been formed by the ways of the empire under Pharaoh's rule. The value system of Egypt defined their worth by how many bricks they could make or stack in a day, in a week, in a month, or a year. Their value was singularly found in what they contributed to society and to a system that was completely indifferent to their pain and their longings. It heard not their cries of lamentation. It was unaffected by their joy or their death. it cared about was their work. And for Egypt to be satisfied, their work could never end. No one could rest in Egypt, not even Pharaoh. So in the Sabbath, and specifically here in Exodus 31, God unequivocally establishes a value system that is the antidote to Egypt. Our passage comes in the middle of God explaining to Moses the dimensions and the design for the construction of the tabernacle, which will be God's dwelling place on earth. This is sacred and important work if there ever was any. And it is work that the Israelites know how to do. But God says, you are no longer in Egypt. 6 days only shall you work. For the seventh day draws the boundary between work and slavery. And the day of rest ought not enable a frantic and exhausting life. Rabbi Abraham Heschel clarifies. He says, humans are not beasts of burden. And the Sabbath is not for the purpose of enhancing the efficiency of work. The Sabbath is not for the sake of the weekdays. The weekdays are for the sake of the Sabbath. It is not an interlude, but the climax of living. Old Testament scholar Nahum Sarna applies a similar framework to the difference between holy space and holy time, tabernacle and Sabbath. He says, the tabernacle enshrines the concept of holiness of space. The Sabbath embodies the concept of holiness of time. The latter, the Sabbath, takes precedence over the former. And the work of the tabernacle must yield week after week to Sabbath rest. So, friends, not even the holiest of work takes precedent over the Sabbath. As the old rabbinic phrase reminds us, the Sabbath is last in creation, but first in intention. And this is as true for us today as it was for Israel coming out of Egypt. If there was ever a society and an economy fueled by the unceasing drive to grow and expand, to acquire and increase, in other words, an economy characterized by the values of Egypt, our economy is that economy. Walter Brueggemann has argued that the Sabbath commandment is the most urgent and demanding of them all for Western Christians. For, he says, we are, liberals and conservatives, much inured to Pharaoh's system. I'm with Brueggemann. I believe the Sabbath is one of the most powerful and relevant, one of the most urgent and difficult spiritual practices for modern American Christians. I believe this because I believe the Sabbath is much more than merely a day that we set aside to rest from work. It's more than a day to play board games and resist checking your email or buying the week's groceries. It is that, but it's a lot more than that. The Sabbath, as I've already suggested, is a value system. It's a way of life that forms us in a Godward way by creating space in our lives and in our hearts to practice being truly present to our lives. It is a day-long pause to sit with life's most urgent and pressing questions, and to truly listen to the answers that our hearts offer. So on the Sabbath, we cease. We Shabbat. The meaning of the word Shabbat in Hebrew, which we get Sabbath from, it means to cease. And so stopping is inherent to Sabbath keeping. We cease from working. We cease from email and from grocery shopping, from house cleaning and from mindlessly scanning social media. We cease from homework. We cease from rushing around everywhere. But the point of Sabbath is not the stopping. The stopping serves a larger and more important purpose, which is to create space in our lives to encounter the living God, to attend to the seed of eternity planted in our hearts. It is to practice gratitude and presence. Sabbath is therefore a central practice of Christian discipleship. It guides us on the lifelong pilgrimage toward becoming more fully ourselves, more fully Christ-like. It apprentices us in the truth that we are all the beloved children of God. But we have to commit an entire day out of every week to guard and protect the integrity of the Sabbath and its value system, because the inertia of the workaday world, what Abraham Heschel called technical civilization, would see the Sabbath's value system abandoned and forgotten. The messages that we hear every day tell us that our value, our success, and our belonging in and to society is dependent on our submission to Egypt's value system. If we conform to the system and succeed according to its standards of speed, endless productivity, endless achievement, then our lives are valuable and we belong. But if we cannot, either now or at some point in the future, if we have a disability and we can't move fast enough, if we are attracted to the wrong gender, if our skin is the wrong color, if we have the wrong sign planted in our yard, or we live on the wrong side of town, or speak with the wrong accent, or we don't make enough money, our lives do not have value and we do not belong. But in such a society governed by the value system of Egypt, we all lose. We are all diminished. In such a situation, we are as far from the value system of the Bible as Egypt is from Canaan. But we are not left alone in the wilderness, nor abandoned in Egypt. God has given us a gift that can realign our lives with the heartbeat of creation, and which can form us more fully into the image of Jesus, who is the true Lord of the Sabbath. God has woven into the fabric of creation a golden thread that can serve as a yellow brick road to guide us home to God and to ourselves. As Heschel so beautifully says, there is a realm of time where the goal is not to have, but to be. Not to own, but to give. Not to control, but to share. Not to subdue, but to be in accord. Life goes wrong when the control of space and the acquisition of the things of space becomes our sole concern. Friends, we are living in resonance with the Spirit when even our work life reflects this vision. But let's return to Exodus 31 for just a moment. I want to introduce you to two related words that feature prominently in our passage and help unlock some of its meaning. The first word might be familiar to you if you know a bit of Hebrew vocabulary. It's the word nephesh. Nephesh has a remarkably wide range of meaning, including everything from neck and throat to personality, to one's breath and one's being, to include the members of one's family, and several more meanings besides. It is a word that's hard to pin down. But the heart of nephesh refers to the essence of one's life, from the breath that sustains us by flowing through our throat, to the personality that we present to the world, to our essential character formed by the most important relationships in our lives. Nephesh is one's true self, held fast in the heart of God. And it is the nephesh that gets cut off from the people in verse 14. When we make light of the Sabbath and reject God's weekly gift of rest and restoration, we cut ourselves off from who we were created to be. We cut ourselves off from the very source of our life, which is a form of death. Life or death, the Sabbath truly is. Now, the verbal form of this word, as it appears here in Exodus 31, is vayinafash. Can you hear on the end nafash and how that sounds a bit like nephesh? So nafash, as it appears here, according to Nahum Sarna, is, he says that the verbal form used here conveys the notion of a fresh infusion of spiritual and physical vigor, the reinvigoration of the totality of one's being. You could say that one is re-nephished on the Sabbath, brought back to the fullness of life. This is what practicing Sabbath is all about. It's about coming fully alive. As Howard Thurman said, what the world needs is people who have come alive. What the world needs is more Sabbath keepers. But what's remarkable about vayinafash, as it appears here in verse 17, is that God is the subject of the verb. God is re-nephished on the Sabbath. God is made fully alive. Not only does God model the importance of Sabbath keeping for us in the creation story, somehow, mysteriously, God even experiences some of its restorative power. Maybe God even felt the temptation to associate God's value with what Henry Nouwen called the three lies of our culture. I am what I do, I am what I have, I am what people say about me. Perhaps the Sabbath had to remind God that your value is not found in what you do. It's not found in what you have, and it's not found in what creation thinks about you. Your value is intrinsic to your nephesh. So in this way, the Sabbath keeps our nephesh even as we keep the Sabbath. A famous Jewish phrase credited to Echad Ha'am confesses, more than the Jews have kept the Sabbath has kept the Jews. I can say this without hesitation for my own life. It is so easy to associate my worth with my work, and so to diminish my life, to diminish my nephesh. Just about everything I do and everything I hear reinforces that lie to me. Who am I if I'm not a seminary professor? Or you can fill in the blank for who you are. Am I enough if I'm just me? And as the Sabbath gently and tenderly, weekly, offers my nephesh back to me, it offers a definitive response to my misguided questions. Yes, it says, you are enough. You are beloved. Your life matters. You belong to God. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.